Walk down almost any American suburban street and look at the houses. The biggest door on most of them is not the front door. It is the garage. In many neighborhoods, the garage door occupies more of the street-facing facade than the windows, the porch, and the entrance combined. Some houses, viewed from the street, look less like homes where people live than like structures built to shelter automobiles that happen to have some living space attached. It feels normal. It feels like what a house is supposed to look like. But this is an extremely recent development. Before World War II, most American homes didn't have attached garages at all. The car lived in a separate structure at the back of the property, out of sight, out of the architectural equation, with no relationship to the front of the house. The front porch welcomed visitors. The front door was the centerpiece. The car was stored somewhere else. Something changed. A series of small, practical decisions, each one sensible on its own terms, accumulated into one of the most significant transformations in the history of American residential design. And the consequences reached further than anyone anticipated. The garage didn't just change how houses look from the street. It changed how Americans know their neighbors. And almost nobody noticed it happening. The garage moved from behind the house to the front of it over the course of roughly 50 years. No law required it. No architect designed it. No developer announced it as a policy. It happened because economy, convenience, and the geometry of the suburban lot all pushed in the same direction, and nobody pushed back. Chapter 1. When the car lived behind the house. Before the automobile, American homes already had a solution to the question of where to keep a large machine that required shelter and maintenance. It was called a barn, or a carriage house, or a stable. And it was located behind the house, for reasons that everyone at the time understood without needing to articulate them. Fire risk from hay and fuel. Smell, noise. The simple fact that the animal or vehicle used for transportation did not need to be adjacent to the rooms where people slept and ate. When the automobile replaced the horse, it inherited the horse's housing arrangements. The word garage entered English from the French gare, meaning to shelter or dock around 1900. The first American residential garages were converted carriage houses or simple wooden outbuildings, positioned at the rear of the property, accessed from an alley or a side drive that ran alongside the house. From the street, the car was invisible. The house was what the street saw: a front porch, windows, a front door that signaled welcome. As automobile ownership expanded through the 1910s and 1920s, accelerated by the Ford Model T, which put car ownership within reach of the American middle class for the first time, detached garages became a standard feature of residential properties. They were modest structures, functional, architecturally unremarkable. Nobody was proud of their garage the way they might be proud of their porch or their garden. The car was a tool. You stored the tool in an outbuilding. The outbuilding stayed out of sight. This arrangement was practical, and it was stable. It persisted for decades, and it might have persisted indefinitely if a particular group of architects and homeowners in a particular part of the country hadn't begun asking a different question. The detached rear garage worked fine for the first generation of car owners, but one part of America was already living differently, where cars had become as essential as running water, and the architecture was beginning to reflect that. It was California, and the solution it invented would eventually spread to every suburb in the country. Chapter 2. California invents the attached garage. California in the 1920s and 1930s was, by most measures, a decade ahead of the rest of the country in its relationship with the automobile. The climate encouraged outdoor living and year-round driving. The cities spread across geographies that rewarded car ownership. Public transit existed, but suburban distances made it inadequate. By the time the rest of America was still treating the car as a significant convenience, California was treating it as a necessity. The architectural response to this reality was the attached garage, a design feature that began appearing in upper-middle-class California homes during the 1920s. The logic was domestic and entirely practical. If you are unloading groceries from a car in the rain, It is more convenient not to cross a yard to reach the house. If you are leaving for work before sunrise, it is easier to move from your kitchen to your car through a connected interior space. The garage, attached to the house and sharing a wall with the living spaces, made the car part of the daily domestic routine rather than a separate expedition. Frank Lloyd Wright was among the first prominent American architects to take this logic seriously as a design principle rather than a convenience feature. His Usonian houses of the 1930s, designed to be affordable for middle-class families, incorporated carports and covered automobile areas as genuine architectural elements, not afterthoughts. Wright argued that the automobile was a fact of modern American life, and that a modern American house should be designed around that fact, rather than organized as though it were still the 19th century. The California ranch house, the horizontal, single-story design that Cliff May was developing during the same period, and that we discussed in an earlier episode, accommodated the attached garage naturally. A long, low house spreading across its lot has room beside its living space for a garage without disrupting the floor plan. The garage sat to the side, slightly recessed from the front of the house, designed for one car, modest in proportion. It complemented the home. It was part of the design. It did not dominate the street. Not yet. The attached garage was a California solution to a California problem in the 1930s. Then the war ended. 16 million veterans came home, and the country started building suburbs faster than it ever had. The attached garage was about to go national, and what happened when it did would change the American house in ways that nobody had planned. Chapter 3. Every family gets a car. Between 1940 and 1950, the number of registered vehicles in the United States grew from approximately 27 million to approximately 49 million. That is an 81% increase in a single decade. By 1960, the number reached 74 million. By 1970, 108 million. The post-war American suburb was being built for a population that was acquiring cars at a pace that the country had never seen before and that the architecture of residential neighborhoods would have to accommodate. The new suburbs being built under the GI Bill were not designed to be walkable. The grocery store was not next door. The school was often a drive away. The kind of commercial life that had been embedded in pre-war urban neighborhoods, the corner store, the neighborhood pharmacy, the hardware shop on the block, was separated from residential areas by the single-use zoning that the previous episodes in this series have documented. A family without a car in one of these new suburbs was not inconvenienced. It was stranded. The automobile had moved from being a significant convenience to being a prerequisite for suburban life. And once the car was a prerequisite, the question of where to put it stopped being an afterthought. It became a fundamental design question. Here is a detail that tends to get lost in the popular account of post-war suburban development. The original Levittown homes, the Cape Cod designs built in Nassau County, New York, beginning in 1947, did not include garages. The most famous post-war suburb in America was initially built without the feature that would eventually define the American suburban home. Levitt added carports to his 1,949 ranch-style models. Subsequent developments, including Levittown, Pennsylvania, included garages more consistently. The evolution happened quickly, within a few years of the first homes being built, because builders were responding to what buyers were telling them they needed. The car needed a place to sleep, and builders were about to discover that the most economical way to provide that place would also become the defining feature of the American streetscape. Once every family had a car, the question was where to put it. And when builders started attaching garages directly to houses, they discovered something that changed everything. It was cheaper. Economy was about to do what convenience alone had started. Chapter 4. The economics of attachment. The reason the attached garage spread so rapidly through post-war suburban construction was not primarily that buyers demanded it or that architects championed it. It spread because it was cheaper to build than the alternative. A detached garage requires its own foundation its own roof, its own exterior walls on all four sides. If you want to connect it to the house without crossing the weather, you also need a covered walkway. Every one of these elements costs money. An attached garage, by contrast, shares a wall with the house, is covered by the same roof structure, and eliminates the connection corridor entirely. It uses less material per square foot than almost any other residential space. For a developer building hundreds of homes on a construction budget, the attached garage was simply the economical choice. The FHA's influence on this decision is worth characterizing accurately. Its minimum property standards, the guidelines that builders had to satisfy to produce homes eligible for FHA-backed mortgages, favored homes that accommodated automobiles. Not because FHA officials had strong opinions about garage design, but because cars had become essential in the suburban environments where the FHA was primarily financing construction. A home without automobile accommodation was less functional for its likely buyers, and therefore a somewhat less sound investment by the FHA's risk assessment logic. Builders didn't need to be told explicitly. They understood that garage-equipped homes served their buyers better and satisfied lender preferences. The result was rapid standardization. By the early 1950s, the attached garage was a standard feature of new suburban construction across most American markets. It was present not because a law required it or a movement promoted it, but because it solved a practical problem cheaply, and buyers in car-dependent suburbs genuinely needed it. The attached garage became the default residential feature through the same mechanism that produced the ranch house, the open front lawn, and single-use zoning. A combination of economic incentive and buyer expectation that reinforced itself with each successive development. Before we get to the part where the garage takes over the front of the house, if this episode is making you see your neighborhood differently, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Every week, How It Started takes something you see every day and shows you the decisions that produced it. Hit the button, and we'll see you next week. Chapter 5. From one car to two. The first attached garages built into post-war suburban homes were modest, single car, approximately 200 to 240 square feet. This reflected the reality of the early 1950s. Many households owned one car. One parent, usually the father, drove to work. The other parent, usually the mother, stayed home. One garage stall was sufficient. American life then changed in ways that the people building those one-car garages could not fully anticipate. Women entered the workforce in increasing numbers through the 1960s and 1970s. Teenagers obtained driver's licenses and needed transportation. Suburban distances that a single car had managed adequately became inadequate as families' daily schedules multiplied. The two-car household went from an aspiration to a practical necessity for many suburban families in less than a generation. Builders responded exactly as they always had. They built what buyers needed. Two-car garages began appearing as upgrade options in the 1960s and as standard features in many markets by the 1970s and 1980s. By the 1990s, the two-car garage had become the baseline expectation for new suburban construction across most of the country. By 2022, approximately 68% of new single-family homes in the United States were built with two-car or larger garages. The two-car garage is approximately 400 to 440 square feet. This is roughly double the floor area of the single-car garages built in the 1950s. It is larger than most bedrooms in the same house. It is, in some configurations, larger than the master bedroom suite. The room built for cars had grown to become one of the largest rooms in the house, and that room had to go somewhere on a lot that was not getting any wider. The lot stayed the same size. The garage got twice as big. The only direction left was forward toward the street. And when the garage moved forward, it brought everything that followed. Chapter 6. The garage moves to the front. The snout house was not designed. It was produced. The geometry of the suburban lot creates a specific problem when the garage reaches a certain size. A two-car garage requires approximately 20 feet of width. A standard suburban lot is typically 60 to 80 feet wide. If the house also needs 40 to 50 feet of width to accommodate its living spaces, fitting the garage beside the house without projecting it forward requires either a very wide lot or a very narrow house. Builders working on standard lots with standard budgets chose the simplest solution: let the garage protrude toward the street. The result is what architects and urban planners came to call the snout house, a home where the garage projects significantly beyond the main living space, jutting toward the street like the snout of an animal. The technical planning definition is precise. A snout house is one where the garage protrudes more than 20% of the home's street-facing facade width beyond the main living space. By this definition, a substantial fraction of the suburban homes built between the 1980s and the 2000s qualify. From the street, the visual consequence is striking. The garage door, typically 8 feet tall and either 16 feet wide for a double door or 2 single doors of 9 feet each, occupies the dominant position on the facade. The windows, the front entry, the porch, if there is one, are all pushed to the side or set back behind the garage. A visitor approaching the house must first walk past the largest element of its face before finding the actual entrance. In many neighborhoods built during the 1980s and 1990s, walking down the street means facing a continuous row of garage doors. The human elements of the architecture, the windows that might show whether someone is home, the front door that might open to welcome a neighbor, the porch where someone might be sitting are visually secondary to the automobile storage. Portland, Oregon became the first major American city to pass regulations specifically addressing this problem in the mid-1990s. The city's planning department had studied the social consequences of garage-forward design and concluded that something worth legislating about was happening. The regulations limited how far garages could protrude beyond the main living space and required that certain design elements, windows, porches, distinctive entry features, remain visible from the street. The planning rationale was not primarily aesthetic, it was social. And what the Portland planners had documented was something that most suburban homeowners were experiencing without connecting it to the garage. Chapter 7. The front porch and the garage door. Before World War II, the front porch was the transitional space between private home and public neighborhood. It occupied a position in daily American life that is difficult to fully recover from description alone. People sat on their porches in the evenings. Neighbors stopped to exchange a few words while walking past. Children played in front yards within sight of parents on the porch. The simple act of leaving the house through the front door and pausing on the porch produced a moment of semi-public exposure that sustained casual daily contact between people who lived near each other. The porch was a social technology, not glamorous, not intentional in any organized sense, but functional in the specific way that unplanned systems are sometimes more functional than planned ones. It worked because everyone used it, and everyone used it because there was no alternative entrance. As the garage grew and moved forward, the porch did not immediately disappear, but it became architecturally marginal. In many garage-forward homes, the porch still exists. It appears in the design plans. It is listed in the real estate description. It shows up in the Census Bureau data that tracks front porch inclusion in new homes. The Bureau's numbers actually show an increase in front porch inclusion in recent decades, from approximately 42% of new homes in 1992 to approximately 66% in 2022, reflecting buyer preference research and new urbanist influence. But a porch that is set behind a projecting garage, that faces a street where nobody walks because everyone drives, that is bypassed daily by the people who own the house because they enter through the garage, that porch is a decorative element, not a functional one. It is the residential equivalent of the ceremonial front door, present, photographable, and largely unused. The daily pattern that replaced the front porch is so familiar to most Americans that it takes a deliberate effort to notice it. You pull into the driveway. The garage door opens automatically, from a button pressed before you stop. You drive in, you park. You walk through the door that connects the garage to the house. The garage door closes behind you. You are inside. You have been outside your car for approximately 30 seconds in a private, enclosed space with no exposure to the street or to any neighbor who might happen to be nearby. The front door, meanwhile, is waiting at the front of the house. It will be used when guests arrive, when a delivery comes, at holidays, by the people who don't know that the family actually enters from the side of the garage. Something specific happened when the garage became the primary entrance to the American home, not just to the house, to the neighborhood itself. And the city of Portland's planning researchers studying streets of snout houses documented what it was. Chapter 8. The button that changed the neighborhood. The electric garage door opener was invented in the 1920s. Various inventors contributed to the technology, and specific attribution is disputed, but its mass consumer adoption came in the 1950s, when the suburban boom created the market scale necessary to make it a household product. By the 1960s and 1970s, the automatic opener was becoming standard equipment in new garage construction. By the 1980s, it was ubiquitous. The opener's convenience is obvious. You arrive home in rain or snow or after dark. The door opens before you stop. You drive in without getting out of the car. The door closes behind you. You are in a warm, dry, private space, connected directly to the interior of your home. From the perspective of individual daily comfort, the automatic opener is a clear improvement over every alternative. The Portland planning research documented the aggregate social consequence of this individual comfort. Streets where homes faced each other across visible front entries, where people used front doors and had front porches, and the daily movement of households was visible from the street, had measurably more neighbor-to-neighbor interaction than streets where homes faced the street with garage doors, and the daily movement of households happened inside enclosed private spaces. This is not a complicated finding. The mechanism is obvious once stated. If you enter your home through a front door, there is a moment, brief, casual, unplanned, when you are visible to the street and potentially to any neighbor who happens to be outside. Over the course of a week, a month, a year, those moments accumulate into the casual familiarity that makes a person know their neighbors rather than merely live near them. The front porch was a technology for producing those moments. The garage door is a technology for eliminating them. Survey research consistently finds that most suburban homeowners enter their homes primarily through the garage. Many report going multiple days without using the front door. The front entrance has become ceremonial in the same way that the formal dining room became ceremonial. Still present, occasionally used, no longer part of the daily rhythm of the household. The neighborhood did not lose its front doors. It lost the daily moments that front doors produced, and it lost them not because anyone decided to eliminate neighborly contact, but because a convenient button made it possible to bypass the moments where that contact had always happened. Chapter 9. The status signal. The garage became, by the 1990s and early 2000s, the three-car garage had become a feature of American residential design that functioned the way Capability Brown's lawn had functioned 2 centuries earlier, as a status signal that communicated something about the owner's means through deliberate excess. A three-car garage requires space for 3 vehicles. The average American household owns fewer than 2. A 3-car garage in a 2-car household means one bay is almost certainly being used for storage, or a workshop, or a home gym, or simply sitting empty. The room demonstrates not that you need to park 3 cars, but that you can afford to build space for 3 cars. In 2022, approximately 21% of new single-family homes in the United States were built with 3-car or larger garages. More than 1 in 5 new homes was built with more garage than the household's vehicle fleet requires. The garage conversion paradox reinforces this reading. Research estimates suggest that approximately 1 in 3 American homeowners has converted part or all of their garage to non-automotive use: home office, gym, music room, workshop, storage, entertainment space. The room that displaced the front porch is, in millions of American homes, too full of everything else to fit a car. The driveway serves the automobile. The garage serves the household's overflow. This is the most complete expression of what the garage has become in the American home. Not primarily a room for cars, but the largest and most flexible room in the house, available for whatever the household needs to store that cannot fit anywhere else. It started as horse housing. It became a status signal. It became a necessity. It grew into the dominant feature of the suburban streetscape. And now, for a significant fraction of the households that have one, it functions as a large general-purpose room that happens to have a very wide door. And now, after a century of accumulating functions, the garage is being asked to do something new again. Something that nobody who built the first attached garages in California in the 1920s could have anticipated. The car that changed the house is changing again, and the room built to house it will have to change with it. Chapter 10. The garage's next chapter. Electric vehicles require charging infrastructure. A home equipped for EV charging needs electrical capacity that most existing garages were not built to provide. It needs a dedicated circuit, often upgraded wiring, sometimes an upgraded service panel. The garage that was designed to shelter a gasoline engine is now being asked to function as a small power station, one that charges a vehicle overnight and may, in future configurations, feed power back to the house during outages. This is a genuine transformation of the garage's function, and it is happening faster than the garage's previous evolutions. The transition from detached to attached took roughly 30 years. The transition from one car to two car took roughly 20. The EV charging transition is being driven by federal policy, state mandates, manufacturer timelines, and consumer adoption curves that are all moving on compressed schedules. Builders are already incorporating EV charging as a standard feature in new construction in some markets. The garage is adding a new identity, not just storage and shelter, but energy infrastructure. Meanwhile, some communities are running a different experiment, returning the garage to the alley. New urbanist developments. From Seaside, Florida in the 1980s to Celebration, Florida in the 1990s, to dozens of new traditional neighborhood developments since, have deliberately placed garages at the rear of properties, accessed from alleys. The street-facing facade of every home shows windows, a front door, a porch. The garage is invisible from the street. Neighbors enter through the front door. Daily movement is visible to the street. The research from communities that have tried this is consistent with what Portland's planners found. People who live on alley garage streets report knowing more of their neighbors than people who live on snout house streets. The reintroduction of the alley, a feature of pre-automobile residential design that post-war suburban development largely eliminated, is producing the casual daily contact that the snout house eliminated. This is the most direct demonstration that the consequences of the garage's migration from the back of the house to the front were not inevitable. They were architectural, and architectural choices can be made differently. Chapter 11. The room that ate the house. The garage did not arrive at the front of the American house because anyone decided it should be there. It arrived through accumulation. The horse needed housing, and the barn went behind the house. The car inherited the barn's position. California architects figured out that attaching the garage to the house was more convenient. Post-war builders figured out that it was cheaper. Growing car ownership required more space. More space on a fixed-width lot meant projecting forward. Projecting forward produced the snout house. The snout house required a door opener. The door opener privatized the daily entrance. The privatized entrance eliminated the moments of casual neighborly contact that the front porch had always provided. Each step was individually logical. No step was planned. The automobile moved from behind the house to the side of the house to the front of the house, across the span of roughly 50 years, driven not by any single force, but by the interaction of convenience, economy, changing car ownership, lot geometry, and the accumulated decisions of millions of builders, buyers, and zoning boards, who were each solving the problem immediately in front of them. If you are over 50, you watched some version of this happen. You grew up in neighborhoods that may have had front porches, or in houses where the front door was the primary entrance, or in communities where you knew who lived next door without having to make a special effort to find out. You watched new construction in your community shift toward garage-forward design. You may have moved to a newer house yourself and found that the garage was where you parked and where you entered, and where you stored the things that used to live in the basement, and where the kids shot baskets on the driveway. You probably didn't connect any of this to the garage, but the garage was part of the story. A room that started as a converted horse shelter became, in 50 years, the largest and most dominant room on the front of the American house, and in the process, quietly changed what American neighborhoods feel like to live in. The front door is still there. It is waiting, on most suburban homes, slightly off to the side of the garage. Most days, nobody uses it. That's how the garage ate the house. If you want to know how the house got its ranch layout, why the street in front of it has no fences, why the lawn requires a mower every Saturday, and why the highway that got you there was built in a committee room in 1956. Every one of those episodes is already waiting for you in this series. Subscribe so you see the next one when it drops. Leave a comment telling us whether your neighborhood is front porch or garage door. And share this with someone who has never thought to ask why the biggest door on their house doesn't open to let people in.